flights to and from the UK are delayed every year, leaving passengers frustrated, bored and angry. But thanks to the catchily titled EU Regulation 261/2004, delays can mean money. If your flight's held up, you could be eligible for up to £480 per person. Even better, the rule's retrospective, applying to flights taken during the last 6 years. Well, sounds good so far. So how exactly do you qualify for this compensation? Well, first of all, you need to have flown in or out of a European airport. Secondly, the delay must have been for more than 3 hours. And lastly, the airline needs to have been at fault. Now that last bit is important. Why? Because if the airline can show it wasn't to blame, well, you can wave bye-bye to your payout. Judging by the complaints to Watchdog, the most common way for airlines to wriggle out of payment is by blaming a so-called extraordinary circumstance. But what does that mean exactly?
An extraordinary circumstance is an event outside the control of the airline. Things such as an aircraft that gets hit by a bird, whether on the windscreen or in the engine, would clearly have an exceptional circumstance and would need to land immediately. Likewise, an emergency on board the plane, such as a medical emergency, might incur the aircraft landing suddenly. That would also be an extraordinary circumstance. Finally, weather events, such as the volcanic ash in 2010, when all aircraft were grounded for a week, would be exceptional circumstances for which no compensation will be paid.
A straightforward explanation, one that's simple to understand. So why are so many airlines struggling with the definition? Take Thomas Cook. Andy Edge was delayed for 12 hours on a flight out to Tunisia with the airline last year.
Once we got over the English Channel, the pilot just came on the radio and announced that we'd been diverted back to Gatwick and had to land. I think we were due to get in one evening and we actually got in the following lunchtime. So we got back to the UK and I got in touch with Thomas Cook. They then wrote me a letter explaining that it was a chiller unit in the galley cart had had a technical fault and had then started smoking on the plane. They then said that they felt it was extraordinary circumstance and because of that they weren't prepared to pay out.
Now, clearly Thomas Cook were right to ground the flight, but were they right to blame someone else? Does a smoking galley cart count as an extraordinary circumstance?
Extraordinary circumstances do not include normal technical faults. The courts have made it clear that technical faults are things which airlines should expect and prepare for. They should have adequate maintenance, and they should, if necessary, have standby aircraft if an unexpected technical fault occurs.
So, our opinion? No extraordinary circumstance. Next, Monarch. Anthony Durrant and his wife tried to claim compensation from them when their flight back from Portugal was delayed for 9 hours back in October.
The Airbus that was due to fly back on developed a technical fault, something to do with the nose cone or the front landing gear. Therefore, there was no Airbus available, so they had to split us onto 2 planes. They put us on the second plane, and eventually that didn't go till 7:30 in the evening. We contacted Monarch, and they told us it was extraordinary circumstances, therefore there was no claim.
A delay caused by a fault on a different flight? How should this one be classed?
The European Court has determined that an extraordinary circumstance can only be applicable to your own flight. That means if the plane was subject to a technical problem on a previous flight, they cannot use that as an extraordinary circumstance.
So who do the airlines answer to? When the new compensation rule was introduced, the Civil Aviation Authority urged passengers affected by lengthy delays to make claims and said it was ready to ensure the airlines complied. Strong words from the CAA, but have they followed it with action? Not enough, says Anthony.
I contacted the CAA and they said, well, in our opinion, there is a claim. Go back to Monarch and tell them that in our opinion, you should, there is a claim. But Monarch said no.
That's because the Civil Aviation Authority can't force airlines to pay out. But 6 weeks ago, the EU promised to strengthen passengers' rights with new legislation tightening the definition of extraordinary circumstances. By 2015, only delays caused by natural disasters and air traffic control strikes can be so defined. those caused by technical problems identified during routine aircraft maintenance cannot. Still, however clear the rules might be, at least one airline appears determined to play by its own. Karen Strand's Thompson flight from the Dominican Republic was delayed for 14 hours back in 2008. So, as the compensation rule covers delays going back 6 years, she made a claim.
When they did reply, they emailed me and basically said that I should have applied for the compensation within 2 years, and therefore they weren't prepared to do anything, and I didn't have a claim.
Not so, says Alan Bowen.
I understand in this case the airline has alleged that the time limit is 2 years. The European Court has made it clear in an earlier case this year that the time limit is the normal limitation, which in England is 6 years from the date of the flight.
So surely Thompson do have a case to answer. With all three of these airlines seemingly doing their best to sidestep the legislation, and with the CAA unable to force them, where does that leave you and me? On our own, according to our expert.
My advice is to write direct to the airline. If you don't like their response, you put them on notice that you're going to issue proceedings and go ahead and do so.